Imagine walking into a crowded room. Maybe it's a networking event or a really crucial family gathering.
Right, the stakes feel pretty high.
Exactly. Instantly, your posture shifts. You scan the faces, you adjust your tone, and you're like reading the micro expressions of the people around you.
Mm.
You figure out exactly what they need you to be. You're witty, you're attentive, you are completely in control of the room. But according to the material we are diving into today, in that exact moment,
You aren't even home.
yeah, you're not home at all. And welcome to today's deep dive where we're exploring exactly that. It's based on a really profound essay titled The Inhabited Self: Becoming Your Own Center of Gravity and Center of Attention.
It's just such a fascinating piece of work. It points out this ultimate paradox of how we live right now.
Right.
We're endlessly attentive to the perimeter of our lives,
Yeah.
but we're entirely absent from the center.
We feed our awareness everything else, the cultural shifts, the industry trends, the emotional weather of our friends.
Yeah, everything except the one thing that is actually experiencing it all.
Which brings us to the core mission of this deep dive. We're going to answer a surprisingly strange question for you today. Are you actually home in yourself?
Because for a lot of us, we're just subsisting on the leftovers of our own awareness.
Totally. We handle everyone else's needs. We manage the relentless pings on our devices. And, whatever tiny exhausted fraction of bandwidth remains at the end of the day.
That's what your core self gets.
Yeah. It creates this quiet starvation that most of us don't even have a name for.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because the thesis here is that genuine presence isn't like a social performance.
Right. It's not a life hack for charisma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an ontological shift in how you relate to simply existing. And to understand what it means to be home, we actually have to start by looking at physics.
Yeah, the physics of self, the defining characteristic of physical gravity, actually provides the perfect blueprint for this concept.
How so? Well, physical gravity doesn't negotiate. It doesn't ask permission from the objects around it. And crucially, it doesn't require an audience to function.
It just operates.
Exactly. It's an inescapable pull. But we usually think of presence as a purely social dynamic.
Right. I mean, we talk about someone having presence based on how much space they take up in a room or how they project their voice.
Yeah, or whether people naturally look at them. It's entirely measured by the audience's reaction.
But the author is saying we have the entire mechanism backwards, right?
Completely backwards. Social presence, how people react to you, is a downstream effect. Internal presence, which means actually residing in your own space, that's the upstream cause.
But society basically trains us to do the opposite from birth.
It does. A child naturally looks to a caregiver to figure out if they're safe or good,
Yeah.
and if the environment only rewards a specific performance.
Like being quiet or being the high achiever.
Right. Then the child learns to measure their entire sense of self through how others respond. They build what the essay calls a mirror-facing structure of personality.
Yeah.
A mirror-facing structure. Wow, it reminds me of an audience-dependent personality is kind of like a satellite dish.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like it only has purpose when it's actively receiving signals from space. If there's no signal, it's just a useless piece of metal on a roof.
What's fascinating here is how we mistake that audience-dependent adaptation for true personality.
Right.
It isn't necessarily hypocrisy, though. It's just a symptom of a self that was never developed independently of its social reflection. When that gaze is removed, the result is vertigo, groundlessness.
Because there's no signal to receive. But, I mean, let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Isn't adapting to the room just basic human survival? Like
Yeah.
if I walk into a high-stakes boardroom, I have to read the room. At what point does reading the room cross the line into complete self-abandonment?
That is the crucial question. Adaptation is a necessary tool, but the line is crossed when you don't have an independent interior to return to once the meeting is over.
Oh, I see. The author suggests this core practice. Repeatedly stopping and asking yourself, what do I actually think about this?
Not what's acceptable to say.
Exactly. Not the strategic answer, but what is genuinely arising inside you. If you ask that and there's just a void waiting for instructions from the room, that is self-abandonment.
Wow. Okay, so moving that gravity from the external to the internal, it isn't just a philosophical mind game.
Not at all.
It dictates the literal physical biology of how you move through space. Because if your gravity changes, your body has to change.
Yeah, the body is an ancient, highly sensitive processor. It handles reality at speeds the conscious mind can't even match.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting. The essay paints this vivid picture of the uninhabited body, the body of the externally validated person.
Yes, the posture is a dead giveaway.
It really is. They're usually leaning slightly forward, kind of projecting into the space ahead of them. There's this imperceptible physical straining.
And their eyes are constantly scanning.
Yes, scanning to see how their performance is landing. But the breath is the biggest tell.
Oh, absolutely. The breath becomes incredibly shallow. It's held slightly high in the chest, almost like they're waiting for permission from the room just to exhale.
It's exhausting to even think about.
It is, because that held breath is the biological mechanism of bracing. The nervous system interprets that social vulnerability as a physical threat.
So you're literally in fight or flight over a conversation.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with the body of an inhabited self. The breath drops down, it moves freely through the torso. The gaze is open, but soft.
Not vacant, though.
No, not vacant and not aggressive. And the literal physical weight of the body is just accepted by the ground. No part is straining to be elsewhere.
It's like, think about trying to walk across a sheet of sheer ice. Your entire body tenses up. You're making thousands of micro movements just to keep from falling.
Because you don't trust the ground.
Right. And that's what it feels like to walk through a normal Tuesday when your gravity is externalized. You're overriding your body's felt sense just to manage the social ice.
Which leads to progressive estrangement from the self.
But I mean, is the essay suggesting that just taking a deep breath is the cure? Or is this about needing a total physiological reset?
It's a fundamental reset. Grounding in the body, noticing the tension, deliberately dropping the breath. It gives you access to that older, broader knowledge your nervous system holds.
Bridging the gap between the mind and physical reality.
Right. But it doesn't stop there. Once the body is physically anchored, we have to look at where our mental energy is directed.
Right, because gravity is just the foundation. Attention is what actually builds the house of your reality.
Attention is the medium in which all human experience takes place. It's not passive. Two people in the exact same circumstance will have entirely different lives based on what they attend to.
If one attends to richness and the other attends to lack.
Exactly. It's a highly creative act.
Yet we freely give that creative power away. We hand our attention over to the relentless stimulation of a monetized world. We're like always receiving from the outside, but rarely generating from the inside.
This raises an important question, though, about the modern world. It demands our attention from birth.
Algorithms, notifications, all of it.
Yeah. And because of that, people think they're paying attention to themselves when really they're just trapped in self-absorption.
And the essay makes a razor-sharp distinction there, right? Between pathological self-absorption and genuine self-attention.
Yes, self-absorption is outer-directed. It's evaluating yourself through an imagined external gaze.
Asking what the essay calls surveillance questions like, am I acceptable or am I doing okay?
Right, those are panic questions demanding a verdict. Genuine self-attention asks curious questions. What is actually here right now in me?
It's like the difference between a harsh health inspector with a clipboard looking for code violations versus a curious explorer just mapping out new terrain.
That's a great analogy.
But if the interior life is so rich, why does turning inward initially feel so foreign and, well, exhausting for most of us?
Because the interior life has been neglected for so long. It feels thin, not because it's empty, but because the neural pathways for external surveillance are superhighways, and the internal pathways are overgrown trails.
So you have to bushwhack your way back in.
Exactly. And when you do, when you finally turn that curious explorer's attention inward, you inevitably bump into the locked doors.
The hidden self. The parts of our identity we've intentionally or unconsciously locked away. The essay calls them the refugees of the psyche.
Yes. And it's vital to understand that the architecture of consciousness hides things as a protective feature, not a malfunction.
It's a survival mechanism.
Exactly. The essay categorizes these hidden selves into 4 types.
Okay, let's break those down. First, there's the suppressed self.
Right. This is, for example, anger that was punished when you were a kid. It goes underground, but it still generates energy.
It's just leaking out in other ways.
Yeah. Then there's the undeveloped self. These are qualities the environment made clear were unwelcome.
Like being a highly sensitive kid in a stoic family.
Yes. You bury it, which leaves this vague hunger in adulthood. The third type is the lost self.
Versions of you that existed before a major wound or loss altered your self-concept.
Exactly. And finally, the unknown or structural self. These are deep behavioral structures built for survival in past conditions that no longer apply today.
Wow. And these parts aren't problems to be solved. The essay is very clear on that. They are refugees living in exile.
And we fight encountering them tooth and
Oh,
nail.
yeah. We use unquestioned busyness,
Hey.
overscheduling,
Yeah.
constant distraction. It's like keeping the car radio blasted at max volume so you don't have to hear the engine knocking.
That is exactly what we do, because dealing with those refugees feels too large to hold.
But, okay, if these mechanisms successfully protected us as vulnerable kids, isn't it incredibly dangerous to just dismantle them now as adults?
The psychological why here is crucial. Yes, these suppressions were necessary for survival, and they will remain in exile until the internal environment becomes safe. You cannot forcefully tear down these defenses.
That would just cause internal chaos.
Complete destabilization. You can't drag these refugees into the harsh light and interrogate them.
So, if we can't force the doors open, how do we actually invite these exiled parts back into the fold? What is the practice of return?
You start at the edges. The hidden self rarely speaks directly. It speaks in displacement.
Meaning disproportionate reactions.
Yes, disproportionate reactions, persistent longings, and recurring relational dynamics.
Like getting a 10 out of 10 level of rage over a minor typo in an email. That surplus emotion is a displaced voice.
Exactly. The practice is to follow the threads. When that happens, you ask, what am I bringing to this recurring plot? You don't interrogate, you open a conversation.
So what does this all mean for how we treat ourselves in those moments? Because usually my first instinct is to judge myself for overreacting.
Which is just another departure. Self-criticism is returning to the external gaze.
It's like finally opening the door for a timid refugee guest, only to immediately yell at them for taking so long. They're going to turn right back around.
Exactly. Hidden parts emerge incrementally. They're testing the environment to see if the attention you're offering will suddenly withdraw when things get messy.
So you have to be a self that the hidden self can actually trust.
Yes, the return must be gentle, like a good parent beckoning back a wandering child. No lecture, no punishment.
But practically speaking, how do we hold space for a disproportionate reaction without accidentally letting it destroy a relationship in real time?
It comes down to understanding the speed of return. You don't achieve a permanent state of perfect presence where you never get triggered. That's a myth.
Oh, goodness.
Right. Success is simply noticing your departure more quickly. When you start performing instead of inhabiting, you catch it faster.
You feel yourself bracing and you consciously drop your breath again.
Exactly. You acknowledge the displaced emotion internally without letting it hijack your external behavior.
You become spacious enough to receive it. Wow. And, bringing this all back to you, the listener, this is a profound journey.
It really is.
We started by establishing gravity outside the gaze of others. Then, changing the literal tension in your body, we looked at wielding attention as a creative act. And finally, extending hospitality to your hidden self.
And the relevance of all this work. It makes you magnetic.
But not as a strategy, right? Not like a parlor trick.
No, not at all. It's because an inhabited self makes it safe for everyone around you to be real, too.
Yeah.
They can physically feel when you're present.
It regulates the nervous systems of the whole room.
Exactly. You become a true center of attention by becoming the center of your own attention first.
So we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something to explore on your own today.
Think about the systems in your life right now.
Right. If you actually begin practicing this return and you slowly stop feeding all your precious attention to the external world, how will the people and systems in your life, which currently rely on your constant outward focus, react to you finally deciding to stay home?
That's a daunting question.
But it might be the most important one you ever ask.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Take a breath, drop your weight, and we'll catch you next time.